viendo BronxNet. Tu voz, tu opinión, tu visión. Las opiniones expresadas en este programa son exclusivamente de los participantes y de ninguna manera reflejan las opiniones de BronxNet o sus patrocinadores.
Hello, this evening we have Community Board 2 Chairperson Dr. Ian Amrit and District Manager Rafael Salamanca Jr., who are here to talk about Club Heat, a strip club where this past December Bronx resident Monique Rodriguez lost her life.
Comunicaciones.
Me gustó.
Te felicito.
A lo largo de 50 años.
Nunca olvidar de dónde vienes.
Muy bien.
Mucha inspiración, orgullosa, de integridad. La más representación de la ciudad.
Hello and good evening to all. I'm your host, Ramon Rodriguez, and you are watching Dialogo Abierto. Today is March 7th, and we want to hear from you. So send us an email to Dialogo Abierto or visit us at BronxNet.org. This evening, we are here with representatives from Community Board 2 to talk about the development, if you will, the evolution of business establishments, specifically lounges, strip lounges in the Hunts Point corridor. And the impact that they are having in the community, problems perhaps that they are causing to community residents, to other business establishments, problems within the community insofar as any particular crimes that are being committed, etc. So gentlemen, please accept our welcome and accept our gracious welcome to the first bilingual sort of Dialogo Abierto that we are having. Again, thank you for being with us. Chairman, let me start with you to ask you to give us a little bit of a history of what has happened or what is happening in the Hunts Point area as it relates to these strip clubs, and then we can get into to Club Heat,
Sure.
where this unfortunate incident occurred.
You know, just for the record, I think we should begin by saying that Community Board 2 has always supported the entrepreneurial spirit of America, and we invite businesses into our community to operate. Mm-hmm. When it does come down to where businesses present eminent risk to our community and erode the bare fabric of what we stand for, then we begin to take a stand against that. Decades ago, you know, Hunts Point had this stereotype that we've been fighting, hookers in the point, and the big HBO movie really put a black mark over the word Hunts Point.
Sure.
And you can't say Hunts Point in America without someone seeing a prostitute happen into a truck or parade in the streets. So Community Board 2 has really taken a stand on improving the quality of life in our community.
How successful have you been in doing that?
I would say remarkably successful. The Community Board has, to some point, been the watchdog in that community, and our citizens have certainly responded to everything that we've requested of them. We find that most of our information comes from the citizens. Now, if you look at the Hunts Point Peninsula, it's a very dissected community. Mm-hmm. Half of it is business-oriented, and so disconnected from the other half, which is the residents of that community. Residents of that community is, when you look at the demographics, 35% are senior citizens, and 35% are youth or young people under the age of 21.
Wow.
Now, we're looking at two distinct population here that can be influenced by what goes on in our community. Our goal is to bring in businesses to operate so it benefits our community in general. Operations such as strip clubs. We, as much as we would like to think of the free spirit of America entrepreneurial endeavors, we must look at what they represent in our community. What quality of life can they bring or enhance in our community?
Let me ask you this, if I may, to that point. If if this free entrepreneurial spirit were able to be carried out in the form of those types of establishments in the community, do you feel that the community residents would be a little more supportive if they were very regulated and sort of watchdogged, so that unfortunate incidents such as that happened with Ms. Rodriguez would be limited or possibly eliminated?
Our community is a very inviting community and also very accepting. You've lived there. You've grown up in that community. You've seen how it transcended over the years. I do believe that if any business, whether it's strip club or otherwise, a bar other than a strip club, if the business serves the community and serves the community in the sense that it provides a purpose, it maintains safety, and it does not violate any of the codes that our society abides by, then it serves the community, and the community will warmly accept them. We would like to think that those businesses will offer employment to our community residents, but I am somewhat afraid to even encourage strip clubs to offer employments to our young people, because my history with that, as a therapist in the neighborhood, I have been the therapist to many young ladies who have fallen victims to some of these strip clubs over the years. Some of them are not fully operational at the moment or as completely gone. So with that experience, I am very guarded whether I should say we hope the strip clubs would clean up their act and come into our community to do business so that our people may be employed. What we're hoping for is that the strip club may take a new turn or new direction in how they operate. That if they're going to operate in a community board too, and any other community board for that matter, that they abide by the regulations that is expected of them. Safety is certainly one of the big issues. Safety within the clubs and within the outskirts of their operations.
And let me capitalize on that particular point for a minute and turn to Mr. Salamanca here, who's the manager of District 2. Is that correct?
Yes.
And as to the issue of safety, we know that this particular strip club, Club Heat, which opened its doors only in October of last year, has been cited, or had been cited prior to being closed again, have been cited several times by law enforcement agencies, specifically the 41st Precinct, for a series of violations, safety being one of them. Along the lines of safety, the issue that they were employing unregistered security guards, people who were not licensed to perform this type of service. To what extent do you feel, Mr. Salamanca, that that kind of shoddy employment practices may have contributed to the incident that took Ms. Rodriguez's life?
Well, it's definitely a concern for the community. First of all, by law, you have to have a licensed security guard. When you don't have a licensed security guard, that security guard that's at the door checking in the people are out, don't understand or know the practice of what's required of them.
Is that security person armed or unarmed?
They're not armed.
They're not armed.
Yes.
There's no requirement for them to be armed.
No, there's no requirement for them to be armed. What happened to Miss Rodriguez that evening was that she was attending a party. She was with her brother. She went to chaperone her brother.
Who was in a wheelchair.
Who was in a wheelchair, who's disabled. And she went outside to get a cab. A fight erupted outside, and she got caught in a crossfire of this. One of the things that has occurred in Club Heat and in which the community board has been very vigilant is the violence. The violence that's occurring inside and outside of their establishment. In December, Ms. Rodriguez was a bystander. She got killed. In January, on one night, there were 3 people shot, 1 person stabbed.
Emanating from Club Heat?
Yes, in front of Club Heat. That very month in January, the police department, after that shooting, the police department went and did a visit, and they found that they had an unlicensed security guard at the door, and they gave them a violation. Ever since Mr. Rodriguez was killed, the community board wanted to meet with the owners of this gentleman's club. And we were going back and forth in terms of phone calls. And it seemed that after the other shooting, that's when immediately we got a meeting with them. During our meeting, Dr. Amert was there, some members of our executive board, the 41st Precinct, the commanding officer was there.
Okay.
And we invited all of our elected officials who sent a representative. And we had the owner and the manager, and they guaranteed us. They guaranteed us that they were going to have licensed security guards. They guaranteed us that they were going to increase the lighting in front of their establishment. They guaranteed us that they were going to add extra security cameras in front of their establishment and across the street from their establishment. There were many other things that they guaranteed us.
And that was when?
This was in January 26, I believe.
And yet in February, they were cited again and received another violation for another unlicensed security guard.
Yes.
And did they increase the lighting in front of their premises?
No, they have not. After that meeting, what we thought was going to be an amicable agreement, they were supposed to submit to the community board in writing of all the actions that were taken by February 13th, the week of February 13th. Well, today's March 7th.
Yes.
And the community board has not received a letter from them.
And the establishment remains open?
Well, today the establishment is open. What happened was that the Supreme Court and NYPD shut them down last week for a period of a week. So they were closed until they were able to open on Saturday.
What were the requirements imposed on them for shutting down and the ability to reopen?
Well, what was imposed on them, they were given a $5,000 fine, and they were giving a stipulation of different violations. If they were to occur, they will be fined again, and they will be shut down for a period of 14 days, such as having an unlicensed security guard, not searching their patrons properly, and calling the police department.
There's a search procedure that takes place entering this premise?
Yes, there is. And something that I want to point out, how this affects the community in the whole. Community Board 2 covers Hunts Point, and they cover the Longwood area.
Okay.
Club Heat is not the only gentleman's club in the Hunts Point Peninsula.
How many would you say there are?
We have 3 right now and 2 pending. 2 that are trying to get their license. Because of the violence that's occurring in these clubs, the captain from the former precinct, excuse me, has had to station 2 police cars at each of these establishments.
At each?
Yes. So therefore, the people like myself who lives in the district, if I have a quality of life issue at my side of the community and I call 911, it takes them that much longer to respond because most of the cars are on the Hunts Point Peninsula.
Wow.
So that is a concern that the community has in terms of our quality of life issues may not be addressed because the 4-1 precinct as it is down on manpower, and yet their focus has to be controlling the violence that's occurring.
Let's take a pause there and come back to pick up on that and a couple of other things that I want to address that you might be able to shed some light on. And please, don't go away because we'll be right back. Televidentes, gracias por mantenerse sintonizados y no se retiren porque regresaremos en unos breves momentos.
2 outs with a runner on first base. Now the big guy comes out the bat, hitting .342 with 92 RBI.
Enfría alimentos crudos y preparados lo antes posible. Este año, 1 de 6 personas en Estados Unidos se enfermará por comer alimentos contaminados. Visita foodsafety.gov/español. Lava tus manos, utensilios y superficies de cocina con agua y jabón. Este año, 1 de 6 personas en Estados Unidos se enfermará por comer alimentos contaminados. Visita foodsafety.gov/español.
Este es un increíble árbol de trúfula. ¿Te imaginas un lugar donde crecen por todos lados? Sí, se llama bosque. Un lugar mágico para disfrutar con toda tu familia. Descubre el bosque y explora todas las maravillas dentro de él. Para encontrar un bosque cerca de ti, visita descubreelbosque.org.
¿Qué demonios es esto?
Gordura de la espalda. Seguramente alguien lo perdió comiendo popcorn de un tamaño más pequeño.
Dame eso.
Well, thank you for being with us again, viewers, and continuing our conversation here with the representatives from Community Board 2 in the Bronx, addressing the issue of the strip clubs in the Hunts Point area and the impact, the negative impact, if you will, that they're having in that community. Doctor, I wanted to ask you, picking up on what Mr. Salamanca was talking about, the security issues, the strain that the additional law enforcement presence in that community is taking on the 401 precinct, who, as I understand, and as Mr. Salamanca pointed out, has lost some manpower. Okay, what kind of reaction are you getting from the borough president's office in terms of support for what you are trying to accomplish here? And in addition to that, what is the reaction and/or the impact that the presence of these clubs and some of the violence that you've described is having both on the senior citizen population, that you said about 35% of that population is, and then on the other extreme, the youth of that community that's between the age of 18 and 25, and what's that doing to them?
Well, let's start with the support from our elected officials. I believe that pretty much every one of our elected officials is on board with our goal in this community to clean up this community, create a better quality of life for our residents. The borough president has certainly been one of our strongest advocates and supporters, and so has been the councilwoman and the senator and also the assemblyman. Last week we had a protest in front of the Club Heat, and the senator, along with Assemblyman Crespo, was also present. The borough president is one of our strongest supporters, and he supports what we do there. The community board is the watchdog element of first-line government. We are accountable to the people. When they can't reach the borough president, they get to us.
Right.
One of the things that Hunts Point residents have been, they're one of the most resilient communities that I've ever worked in and lived in. And one of the things that I believe that has helped us is that the way they responded to provide information to the board. What we did was act upon information that the community provides us.
Okay.
Are there elements of fear? Are there elements of anxieties? Absolutely. If a community has been affected by increase of crime, a community does become at harm's with that. There's a club being proposed at the old Bada Bing site called Platinum Pleasures, I believe. And that one, I believe, the community will be more more vigilant about, because it's only blocks away from high school, McDonald's, where family visits, and also the residents that I am in question.
Very interesting you mentioned that, because I was about to ask you that I know that there are restrictions on the amount, the distance that has to exist between establishments such as this and either places of worship or schools, nurseries.
If you take the tape measure out, they are within the limits of what's acceptable. However, if you take what they do compared to how visible their actions are going to be when they start operating, and certainly no tape measure could really justify their presence being there.
Sure.
Our job is to make sure not to keep businesses out, but to make sure that if they're operating in our community, we do not give licenses to operate.
Of course not.
We pretty much can send a letter of support or a letter of not to support a liquor license, and the liquor authority could do pretty much whatever they wanted to with that.
They can, and I know that that's another challenge for sure. But it seems that there's such a popularity, if you will, going on now throughout the country, as evidenced by the Occupy Wall Street movement. Such a grassroots movement that is occurring throughout the country, and specifically that starts in neighborhoods, perhaps through community boards, that the stronger that voice gets, the greater the coalition that exists, the more success you are likely to have in defeating some activity, some action, the introduction of another establishment such as this in your area, getting elected official support, community support, and perhaps even the support from other businesses in the area.
The Hunts Point EDC is pretty much one of our, also from the business entity, our strongest advocate.
That's the Economic Development
yes.
Corporation.
Josephine Infante, who spearheaded that,
Yes.
And the business partners of the EDC has certainly is on board with us. Any organization that perpetrates criminal activities certainly cannot be good for the businesses that are surrounding their surrounding neighborhoods. So we want to make sure that if our Hunts Point market is to continue to operate at the success as it is, and all the other businesses that are coming into the peninsula to open up avenues for employment for our people, we have to make sure that those clubs that are operating, or those other businesses that are operating around there, provides a safe environment for the patrons or the business people who are working in that
Sure.
area.
And
So we certainly do have the support of the business enterprise system as we move on this journey. Yes.
And the senior population of the community, do you find that there's a certain amount of fear that they exhibit?
I don't think it's so much fear of their own lives, but fear of their community going back to where it was.
How interesting. How interesting, yes. Because undoubtedly those senior citizens have seen the evolution of the community.
Absolutely, and they were the pioneers who moved it to where it is right now.
Sure.
So
Now,
certainly they wouldn't want to see it going back to that.
Exactly. Let me switch gears here for a minute, Mr. Salamanca. Do you know by any chance whether or not the shooters involved in this incident on that night in December have been apprehended, or
No,
are they
no,
still?
they have not been apprehended.
Nobody's been identified.
There's a $12,000 reward for someone to speak up and so they can capture and prosecute this individual.
Has the local police, has the police department shared any information in terms of whether they believe that it may have been drug related? Was it a retaliatory?
No, it's an ongoing investigation, so very little information is made available to us. All we know that is that they are actively pursuing whatever leads they can get or had.
And so what would then be, if you had an objective that you could describe that you would want to see happen in the Hunts Point area? I guess short of eliminating these types of establishments, what would that be?
We want to continue bringing in businesses to the community. Hunts Point is thriving. The Hunts Point Market just got their grant money so that they can redo expand their market, which is great. We want to continue to bring jobs to the community. Something that the borough president has been very instrumental is that he's focusing also on the environment. You're getting all these trucks that are coming in and out of the Hunts Point Peninsula, and they're polluting the area.
Right.
So what the borough president has done is he's gotten a company in which they will be building these alternative fuels stations, and also trucks, and also these electric trucks, in which people that are in the market can purchase them and use them, in which will have a great impact, positive impact for the community in terms of the environment.
Because I know it's got a very high asthma rate.
Yes, one of the highest in the nation. Something else that we're working on with EDC is an alternative fuel station. in which they will have across the street from the Hunts Point Market, where trucks can go in and they can adjust them so that they can accept these fuels in their trucks. We have a lot of positive things that we want to do. We have a vision, the Greenway. We have a positive vision for the Hunts Point community. And like Dr. Amrit said, what we want to do is we want to bring in good businesses. We want to bring in good business partners in which the community will benefit. And they will provide jobs, and at the end of the day, change the stigma of what Hunts Point used to be.
Well, it's certainly a very enviable goal, and I know one that is not going to be necessarily easy to achieve or achieved in the short term, but in the long term, with the kind of determination that folks like you have, I'm sure that and the support of the community as well as the businesses and the NYPD and your elected officials,
yes,
that eventually you will be able to achieve that and turn Hunts Point area into that greenway and provide the kind of environment that people have worked so hard for. And just in closing, how Miss Rodriguez's brother, whom I know is confined to a wheelchair, how is he doing? Because obviously this happened before his eyes, and he must have been extremely traumatized.
Yeah,
with this.
they were in the protest. They're devastated.
Sure.
He lost his sister, her husband lost his wife and the 3 kids, and they're trying to find answers. And they do know that Club Heat, the violence that has occurred, they've experienced it firsthand.
Right.
Is something that has torn them apart, and that is why they have supported the community board in asking the liquor authority to revoke Club Heat's liquor license.
And the owners of Club Heat, so far as you know, as of today, for example, they reopened and moving forward and probably waiting, I don't know, maybe to be cited for the next violation?
Probably. Well, they're open for business, we know that,
Yeah.
and they're still operating on their liquor licenses until it's revoked, if it gets revoked.
Is that a movement that has been put in motion to
Yes,
revoke their license?
we have sent a letter from the community board on behalf of the community asking that their licenses be revoked.
Okay.
And we've also gotten support from our state senator, Ruben Diaz Sr. He's also had sent a letter, Assemblyman Marcos Crespo,
Okay.
and the borough president as well has, as you see, has put out a statement.
Now, as it relates to, of course, the unfortunate incident of in December and the whole issue that's going on in the Hunts Point area, if any of our viewers would like to offer assistance or get more information or whatever communication they might like to have, is there a number that our viewers might be able to reach the board at?
Yeah, they can reach the board at 718-328-9125.
Okay.
One of the things that we ask, though, is that if there's anything regarding the investigation, anything regarding criminal matters, that you use the authority. We are not the authority in criminality. We are just the watchdog in a community. So we very much like people to get involved, certainly provide information, but if they see anything that is a criminal activity, the precincts and the 911 is the best way to go, and they are very responsive. I believe that Community Board 2 is one of the most fortunate of all communities that I've ever worked or lived in, because it has such a great relationship, not only with the precinct, but with the entities around them, the business and otherwise.
That's great. So I guess, Doctor, that to paraphrase a common expression that you see now on subways, which is, of course, if you see something, say something. I guess to your point, maybe your plea might be, if you know something, say something.
Say something.
Huh?
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you very much for being with us, for sharing this information. I know the challenge that you face, and I know the work that you do is completely voluntary.
Yes, it is.
So again,
it's a labor of love.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much, and good luck to you.
Thank you.
Y televidentes, gracias por mantenerse sintonizado, pero lamentablemente se nos ha acabado el tiempo por hoy.